So today we're going to begin a two-session conversation about how to document a process using the process tools inside of TouchStone. Before we get to that, though, I just want to remind everyone on how you get a process into TouchStone. So here on the 4 key functions, this is where a list of all of your processes should be or is. So I'm just going to go to the overall 4 key functions tab here just so you can see it. So the processes are listed inside each of these 4 key areas. To add a process, you just go to a function that you want to add a process to, and you use this toolbar item here called Add New Process. So that's how you create a process in TouchStone. When you want to access the process, you just click on it. I'm just going to select this one, and now I'm on the process tools page right here. So this is where all the documentation is for how to generate referrals, and this is what we're going to talk about today. So once you add a process, if you go to the 4 functions where you've added it and click on it, then it's going to always take you to this screen. Another way is after you've linked a process to a job description. If I go here to this one doesn't have any processes on it. So let's go back. So if I select a process from a job description, it's also going to take me to this screen, which is the process tools page. So 2 ways. One, you select it from the 4 key functions here, or you select it through the organization chart on the job description that it's linked to. Either way, you're going to go to the same place, which is the documentation of the process. So let's go here to doing the business. Every process, and I got this question in the Help Center the other day, and it was a little baffling, but I'll just repeat it for everyone in case that there's an overall confusion. Every process has its own documentation. So inside of the daily to-do list, this has a checklist in it and a work plan on how to create your daily to-do list. Customer complaints. This has documentation within it on how to handle a customer complaint. Client satisfaction. This has documentation within it on how to ensure customers or clients are satisfied. So every single process has its own documentation inside of it. So let's click on this process, customer complaints. So when I say it has its own documentation inside of it, what I mean is over here to the left, there is content here. There's documentation on how to handle a customer complaint. So inside of every process you'll have in TouchStone, the documentation for how that is done is going to be inside of it. So let's talk about just the general structure of the process tools page. Now we call it the process tools page, and you'll see that header right here. And we call it that because these are the tools, the templates that have been documented for this process. So we call it the process tools page, where the documentation is. So first thing, if you want to edit the title of a process, you just click it. So all I did was select it right here in this box, and it opens for me to edit. You don't click it up here. Sometimes people try to click. It doesn't open there. It opens here. This is the editable view. So I just click it, and then it opens for me to edit. 9 times out of 10, if you want to edit something in TouchStone, you just select it, and it will open for you to edit. Unless it's a fixed field, like process tools right here, I can't edit that, or dashboard or 4 functions. It's going to be clear what the fixed fields are. But anything else, you just click and it'll open for you to edit. So I'm just going to save this. Underneath the title of the process is what we call the objective. So this says resolve and learn from each customer complaint through efficient follow-up and distribution of information. If I click this, it's going to open for me to edit as well. So this field is meant to be a description of the purpose of the process. It's usually a sentence or a phrase. It's typically not a paragraph. I feel like if you're writing a paragraph, you're getting into describing how to do a customer complaint, as opposed to just focusing on the purpose of it. What is it here for? Now you can make these objectives really simple. You can start with like a how-to if you want to, how to resolve. You can do it like that. You can do it more formal, like starting with the action word, so resolve and learn from. Sometimes the how-to terminology in the beginning kind of gets you thinking of, oh, this is what's in here, how to do this. Right underneath the objective field right there are these two options. This is called process documentation completed. So when I fill in this box, it'll turn the process title black everywhere you see it in TouchStone. So if we go back here on the Breadcrumb Trail, you're going to see these processes are all black. Blue means there's something in it, but the documentation isn't finished yet. Somebody hasn't finished that and approved it. Red means there's nothing in it. The documentation has not begun yet. So if we click this and we look over here, all of these tools are empty. There's nothing in them yet. So that's what I mean by empty. The documentation has not been started. So with this, we're going to go back to customer complaints here. When you flip this flag, then the process title will turn black. If I uncheck it, and then I go back here on the Breadcrumb Trail, you'll notice it's blue again because I marked it as incomplete. I was looking at a user's account the other day, and the employees were meant to be documenting the processes, and they just went in and started marking things as complete. And there was work plans in there with like one task, and it was just like either they didn't understand what it means to fully document a process, or they were just trying to get done with their work. But they had just flipped them all black, and I was impressed at first, like, wow, everything's done. But then when we started looking at it, it wasn't really done. So know that if something is marked as complete, you can always unmark it like we just did with this example. This next option right here will make the process public and available to all users. So on the dashboard right here, there's this whole section called public processes. And inside the public processes, or inside this area, you can put processes that are company-wide information. So they're the type of processes that every single employee in the company needs to have access to. Generally, these processes are going to be HR type things, like requesting a vacation, the employee handbook, that's another good one. So think about the process, and if it is company-wide information, then you can put it in the public folder right here. If it's more the accountability of one department or one or two people, then do not put it in the public folder. Link it to that position's job description. So we talked about last week creating of job descriptions. I'll just go to one here. Whatever is Bob's accountability as the manager of marketing goes on his job description. But if there is a process that you want to be company-wide, you want to make it public, then you can put it in the public folder, which makes it available on the dashboard. And that's what this little flag is for. You've noticed as I'm going back and forth from the process tools page to the 4 functions, I usually use this right here, which I call the breadcrumb trail. It's just an old school word for that. But it shows the hierarchy of where the process is on the 4 key functions. So here's doing the business, client service subfunction, customer complaint process. So this is a quick way to get back and forth from where you were if you're going from a process back to the 4 key functions. Right above this breadcrumb trail, there's this toolbar option called Link to Job Description. When I click this, I can see which job descriptions this process has been linked to. And I see it in orange right here, these positions. So this shows me which job descriptions I've already linked this process to. And I can also link it and unlink it from this screen as well. So if I click this position that's orange, it just turned it gray, so taking it off that job description. And then if I click a gray position, it's asking me strategic or tactical section of the job description. I hit link, and then there it is right here. So from this link to job description toolbar item, you're able to see which job descriptions this process has been linked to. In addition, you can link it and unlink it from this view. This is a good tool to use to just make sure that you've got the process on all the correct job descriptions. So once you've built your job descriptions through the org chart, you can just look at each one and go link to job description and just double check. It's also a quick way to link a new process. So once you've built all the job descriptions, if you add a new process to the 4 key functions here, and then you want to link it quickly to whoever is accountable for it, you just go right here and link it. It's much quicker than going back to the job description from the org chart, going add new process and doing it that way. Over here to the left are all of the templates that we have available to document with. Today, I'm going to specifically focus on work plans and checklists. But before we get into that, I just want to explain what each of them is briefly. A work plan is a step-by-step set of instructions or tasks on how that work is done. That's simply what it is. It's the detailed description of the steps of how to handle a customer complaint. The work plan is here at the top because it's the tool you're going to use the most. Every process, there's probably some exceptions, but I would say 99% of the time, every process should have a work plan, at least one. Because the work plan is the training. It's the workflow. It's the description of what happens. It's the overarching documentation tool. The processes, in the end, may have checklists and scripts and files and forms, and they may not. It just depends on what the needs of the process are. But generally, you're always going to have a work plan, and you always want to start with a work plan. Next tool down here is a checklist, and I don't have an example of that one here, but this is a simple tool which puts tasks or steps next to checklist boxes. The scripting tool is a template that helps you to document a conversation or frequently asked questions. So this is the prompt and this is the script. The prompt is the explanation of what's happening and the script is what's said. So greeting, hi, how may I help you? Listen and reflect back on what the customer is saying. I hear that. What you're saying is, yes, I can see that's a problem. So this is giving the person learning this tips and techniques on how to verbally deal with a situation, how to disseminate information, how to deal with a problem, how to coach someone through something. Like in a sales process, it's how to establish needs and then how to address those needs. So anything that happens verbally, the scripting template's a great tool for that. This is the uploaded files tool. This tool allows you to take documents and upload them to the process. So anything that's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or a PDF document, I can take that whole document and upload it to the process. This is like Google Docs or Dropbox. This is allowing you to save templates and content to the process. When you use the uploaded files tool, it will keep that document in its original file format or software format. So Word documents, when you view them and open them, it's going to open Word and show them to you in Word, and same with Excel or PowerPoint or a PDF. This tool is called the document tool. I'm just going to make one here real quick. This is called the document tool because it's like a blank Word document. So I just made one right here. And so this is like a blank Word document. I could build a table with it right here if I wanted to. I could write a letter or just put in text that didn't fit anywhere else for whatever reason. I could make a list here. I could insert a really big image if I wanted to. So the document tool is like it's like a catch-all for anything else you need for the documentation that it doesn't fit into any of these other tools for whatever reason. Underneath the document tool is our custom form tool. So this is our newest tool. It's been around a couple years. This is like Google Forms. So it allows you to create fillable forms like this one. So you want to use the document tool when you need to collect information about what happened in the process. While somebody was doing this work, I want them to fill out a form telling me what happened. Next tool down, this is a policy tool. So this allows you to document important rules, policies, legal things, compliance, safety, anything that's really important about the process that the employee needs to follow. And then the last two tools here are for uploading video and audio. So this is a training video that's been uploaded to this process. And then this is an audio file, which is an MP3 file. So that's kind of a highlight of all of the tools, all the templates. Again, today we're going to go over specifically work plans and checklists, and then I will finish up the rest of the process tools next week. Important thing to remember, and I said this already, but I'll just say it again, if a process should always have a work plan, but it may or may not have all these other tools. We're just giving you options. We're giving you different structures to document the process with that work for that process. So don't try to force these other tools if they don't make sense for the process. Just leave them blank. If you leave a tool blank, like you don't use it, it just has a work plan, when the employee goes to access that on the dashboard, they're not going to see all these headers here. All those will disappear. All they'll see is the tool that you've used. So I'll show you what that looks like. So if I go here to my control panel, so this is where I go to use the process. This is where I'm going to fill things out, access it for training purposes. If I select this one called KPI for Finance, this is just a work plan. That's all this has in it. And all the other tools they don't appear here because I haven't used them. So it looks much cleaner on the dashboard where the processes are actually used. So let's go back here to that customer complaint process. So I'm going to show you how to use the functionality of a work plan first, and then I'm going to explain what makes a good work plan, how to document one really well. So to make a work plan, and all the tools work the same way, I just click the title right here, and then I'm going to put in the name of my work plan. I would also put in the objective, which is the purpose of it, and then I hit create. So now you see over to the left here, there's a new work plan right here. This is the one I just made. So if I was going to go about building this, I'd start by adding a task. So I click Add Task, I click up on this task field, and then this is Task 1. I write out the first step, and then I save it. Then I go Add Task again, and then this is Task 2, and then I save it. So this template is forcing you into step by step by step, which is the best way to do documentation, to document anything. You want to think step by step by step. And the work plan literally is making you add another step. Okay, so now this is task 3. So when you're documenting, try to think, what's the first thing that happens, then the second, then the third, and each time you get to the end of one action and starting on another one, then add another task. Sometimes I see people will just put one task in and then just make a huge list of everything in one task. What that's doing is it's kind of missing the point of the template. If you use the template in the way it was intended, then the effect of that is all of your documentation will look and feel the same no matter who has written it, because you've got this template that they're following. This toolbar is very similar to Microsoft Word. Most of this functionality you probably recognize. If you're cutting and pasting things in from Word, I would go copy and then right-click, paste as text, like this option right here, or you can use this right here, paste as plain text. And the reason is if you cut and paste in from Word and you've got a different font or font size than what is in TouchStone, then suddenly your text all looks different. You can highlight it and change it right here and here, but those are just extra steps. The default font is 12-point Arial inside of TouchStone. So if you cut and paste flat text, then it's going to give you the 10-point Arial size already. There are a few special things inside of the toolbar. Number one is the Hyperlink tool, which is right here. So this allows you to create hyperlinks. So the hyperlinks show the relationships between things, relationships between processes and process tools. The hyperlink will also allow you to link to anything else that lives on the internet, like outside of TouchStone. So any other web tool or website or web page, Google Docs, anything on the internet that has a URL, TouchStone can link to. So to use the hyperlink tool, I highlight the link word. So highlight whatever word you want to become the link word. Then I go to this sideways chain here. Now I'm seeing the link type drop down. I hit the drop down here. The first option I have is called an external link. So that would be anything that lives on the internet, any other web tool, website, web page. I put in the whole URL and then hit insert. If you want to link to another web tool, I'm just going to open Infusionsoft right here. This is our CRM. Go up to the whole URL and go copy, and then go back to your hyperlink, and then paste that whole URL in. That'll take you to a specific page that you're referring to in a web tool, and then you just hit insert. And now, as long as I'm past the username and password screen of that web tool, another software that's web-based, when I click this link, it's going to take me right to that page I was referring to, or the page I put the link in for. Other types of links are things that are inside of TouchStone. So same idea, you highlight the link word, go to the hyperlink tool. Now I hit the drop down. Now these are all the options of things that are inside of TouchStone. So I could link from this work plan to another process. So say that there's information in another process somewhere else in TouchStone that the person who is performing this work plan needs. Then I can choose process. When I hit the drop down here, I see all the processes in TouchStone in alphabetical order. I'd go to that process and then hit insert. Then when the person clicks that link, it's going to take them to that process. You can also do specific tools inside of a process. So work plans, checklists. So if I was on this task of this work plan here, and I wanted to link the customer complaint form, so I say in the task, fill out the customer complaint form, and then I make a link to it. I'd go to custom forms, because I know that's a custom form, and then it's same idea, everything's in alphabetical order. I go down to that customer complaint form, and then I hit insert. And then when I save it, these links are live. So use the hyperlinks to link between TouchStone and other web tools, websites, web pages, but also think about how you can link to things that are inside of TouchStone itself. So if you want to refer to another tool here, you want to say, use this script, fill out this checklist, fill out this form, follow this policy, watch this video. You can make these links directly to it, or you can link between one process and another. The hyperlinks also help eliminate against redundancy inside your system. So if I have information inside of one process that I need to finish another, I would create a hyperlink to it rather than repeating the steps of that process. So behind the scenes in TouchStone, there are these connections that are happening like a flow chart that you don't see because it's complicated to see. The hyperlinks show them though. So when I click the link, I'm taken to something else. At the end of my work plan, I can say, after this work plan is done, then do this process, and I can create a link to that. So that's showing where something ends and something else begins. Also, inside of the toolbar, there's an image uploader, which is this tree icon all the way at the end of the row here. So use images or pictures when ever possible. When you can show a visual of how something's supposed to look, do. Because it's less work that you have to do in writing it out and explaining it in writing if you can show a picture. This is, I think I've shown everyone this before, but this is a tool I use called Jing, and it's free. It's the sun I'm moving around right here. You can also use your snipping tool. This is the snipping tool inside of Windows. I'm sure Safari has one of these, a version of that itself. If I use this snipping tool, I'll just make a plug for Jing, and I take a picture like this. If I go and if I want to circle things, it's like a child's doing it. It doesn't allow you to, you can't really highlight things very well. You can't write things because it's just not that sophisticated. But if I use Jing, it gives you a lot better functionality. So Jing is, I always forget, it's made by SmithTech. So it's the free version of Snagit, which is a more robust version. But you can download this for free for Mac or PC. With Jing, if I take a picture, I can make things the same as the other snipping tool, but it has expansive other kind of highlight and writing features. So I can do arrows like this one, and then I could change the color of the arrow, or I can highlight things like this. I can do text boxes. So rather than that funky writing, I can type in text right here, and then I can expand or shrink the boxes. I can increase the size of the font. So all kinds of things you can do. So when after you've taken a screenshot, I usually always save these just as the word pick. That's just what I use. And I use the same word every time I save it to my computer, because then it will overwrite the last one that I did. And I don't have, tons of screenshots all over my desktop. I don't need them if they're in TouchStone. So I just overwrite the last one that I did. So I'll save this. And I usually just dump these on my desktop. Save. And now you go to the image uploader and you hit choose file. And if I just type in the 3 letters here, I'm going to see what I saved that as. And then I hit open. And then I hit insert. And then there's the image. So once the image is in, you can make it bigger and smaller in TouchStone. I'm just dragging it like here. Once you get it too small, it starts to degrade the text a little bit. But you can make it bigger or smaller just by dragging in and out. And then when I save it, this is what it looks like. So do screenshots, do pictures, anything to show a visual. It's super helpful for people to be able to see how something's supposed to look. Also inside of Jing, and I'll say this again next week, you can do screen capture recording. So if you highlight a screen like this and you go capture, I did that wrong. I captured the image and not the video. So you highlight the video view, let go, and then you hit this little video capture button. And it gives you a countdown. And then you can speak into your computer if you've got a headset. And then you're clicking around, go here, go here. So you're explaining how to do something on a spreadsheet or on another piece of software. Jing gives you 5 minutes free. And you can see the countdown down here. In the free version, you get 5 minutes. And then when you're happy with it, you just hit finish. And then this becomes a little screencast of what I just recorded. If you hit play, you would hear your voice, and it's playing, my clicking around. Now, I could take a video like this, and I can upload it down here to the video tool, which is cool. So if you document a work plan, and then the work plan is a step-by-step, then you can shoot a video as well and follow the work plan. Do this, do that, do the next thing. And then capture that in a video and then upload it. And then it just enhances the training. Somebody has the textbook that they're reading, which is the work plan, and then they can see the visual in the video. Down below the tasks, there's a second section of the work plan called expectations. So this works the same way. I just hit add expectation, click this open. So the expectations are for anything else that you need to say about the work plan that isn't a part of the tasks. So it could be standards, it could be qualities, it could be timing, when something's done, why something's important. So you can add expectations one at a time, just like the tasks. What I usually do when I'm doing this is I'll build the work plan, and then I'll think, is there anything more, anything subjective, anything that around context? Context can be a great thing for documentation because it gives the employee the reason why. Why is this important to do this way? Why are we committed to handling customer complaints in a certain way? Why is that necessary? And if you can build that into the work plan, then when someone's learning it, it compels them to do it in a quality way because they understand the context. Let's go over this toolbar row up here. So this icon will convert a work plan into a checklist. So if I click this and then I say OK, then TouchStone has now just taken this work plan and converted it into a checklist, which is down here now. And you can see all that really happened was the tasks of that work plan were set next to checklist boxes right here and here and here. So every task that was here was put next to checklist boxes, including the expectations. So this is kind of a neat feature because sometimes all the checklist are the tasks of the work plan that someone needs to check off as they do them. So I'll just do it one more time with this one. I hit check, say OK, and then boom, it just took all these tasks and put them next to checklist boxes. Now you can build a checklist that's independent of a work plan, and I'll show you how to do that here in a second. But again, if you do have a work plan that you want to be a checklist, then you just use this icon. The icon to the right of this checklist icon is called Move Process Tool. So this allows you to take a tool out of one process and move it into another. So if I've built something, a tool in this process, and I decide, I want to combine two processes, or this needs to be inside of another process instead of this one. I just go here to this icon and click it. Now I'm looking at the 4 key functions and hunting for the process that I want to move this into. That's what's happening. So these are all the sub-functions from the 4 key functions. So I go to the sub-function where the process is that I want to move this work plan into. I see all the processes in the sales sub-function. I choose the process I want to move this tool into, and then I hit save. And now that work plan is gone from here, you can see, and it's been moved into that other process. This icon here is our export feature. So you're going to see this all throughout TouchStone. It does the same thing everywhere you see it. Print will print what's behind you. So here's this work plan. Whatever's behind me here is going to print. This will open up my own printer settings, and it'll give me a view depending on your printer, and then you can print it. Anything that happens from this printer screen here forward is related to your own local printer. So you have to go to the printer and change the settings of the pages. You can get rid of headers and footers. You can get rid of the dialog screen if you want. But anything that's happening here has to do with your own printer. You can also export to Word. So what will happen here is TouchStone will launch Word, and then it downloads the customer complaint work plan to Word. This is what it looks like here. So this downloads it into a writable format. And then you can also export to a PDF, which is here. I think this is the most polished kind of print version. If you're not wanting to edit it or change it in any way, then print to PDF is good. And then this will allow you to email the work plan. Now, those of you who were last week probably already heard my spiel on printing, but I'll just say it briefly. One of the benefits of TouchStone is that it's a paperless environment, and everything within it is up to date at all times. And everybody who logs into it sees the most current version of everything. The minute you start exporting things, you're creating multiple versions of things. So move into a paperless environment. I think all of us who are concerned about the environment are striving for that as well. So tools like TouchStone help your company to move towards a paperless environment. Another way to show people things inside of TouchStone rather than emailing them out and creating a duplicate version, or worse yet, printing it and putting it on their desk, a better way is to go to what you're referring to in the URL, like up here, right? Click copy, then paste that into an email. and say, go here and look at the customer complaint work plan for me. And then they just, as long as they're logged into TouchStone, they click the link and it takes them right to this page. To the right of this export arrow is this black box icon. This is the archive feature. So this allows you to keep versions of your process tools. Now you may want to keep versions just to remind yourself of what changed from one to the other. So you might, as a manager, you might say to an employee, go and update this work plan for me. And then you want to be able to see the changes they made and revert back to the original if you ever wanted to. So that's a reason to archive. Another reason is if you are in a business that is compliance driven, you have audits, ISO 9000, and you have to prove that you have versions, that you've updated your processes every year for compliance reasons. So that's another reason to archive. So when I'm archiving something, I'm going to archive this work plan. I usually would edit the title and I'd call this version 1, and then I save it. Then I'd go and archive it. So I click this black box icon, I hit archive, boom, now it's archived. It's in the archive. And then I'd go and get rid of this version 1 because this is the live work plan now. And then I go through and edit and change this and update it. If you ever want to go back and see what's in the archive, you go here, View Archive, and then I hit the drop down here and I choose Work Plan because that's what I archived. And now I'm going to see what all the archived versions. So this one here says version 1. It date and timestamps it when you archive it, so you might not need that. I just like this because I have to see the different versions that have been created. If you want to restore a archived work plan, you just hit this little restore arrow here to the right, and then it's going to throw that archived version back into the live section of the work plans. So that's the archive. This button right here is delete. So if you want to delete a tool, any tool, you hit the X, you say OK, and then that tool is deleted. Only administrators can delete, so that's something to know. Unless you're an administrator, you're not going to see that X icon. You won't be able to delete. Also, if you accidentally delete something, even if you are an administrator, we have this big trash can here called View Deleted, and you can go back and restore any tool that you've deleted. This doesn't slow TouchStone down. It has no impact at all. It just acts like a safety net so that you can go back and restore things that you've accidentally deleted. All right, so that's this toolbar row. So let's talk about just a few tips and techniques for building a work plan, and then we'll get on to checklists. When you start in on your work plan, or you start in on documenting a process, the first thing that you want to do is decide if the process is going to have multiple work plans or just one work plan. So over here to the left, this process has 2 work plans in it. There's one for just general guidelines on customer complaints, and then there's the step-by-step for processing customer complaints. Sometimes processes just have one work plan. It's very simple. All it is a series of tasks on how to get that work done, and then boom, that's it. Other processes have multiple work plans within them because there are multiple things that happen. There are multiple workflows. The work plans are kind of like the sub areas of the process. So let me show you an example of that. If we go here to running the business, there's this process called accounts payable. See, this has multiple work plans. How do we pay things with checks? How do we do bank deposits? How do we create invoices, special invoices? How do we make check payments? How do we do credit card payments? So these are multiple work plans all related to accounts payable. So when you first start to document the process, think, is there just going to be one work plan or are there multiple? If there's just one work plan, then just make the title of that one work plan the same as the title of the process. There's no reason to kind of struggle with, well, what's the title? Make it the same as the title of the process. The objective can be the same as well. If there are multiple work plans, then define those. Come up with the titles for those work plans. When you then start in on the work plan, a good thing to do is to kind of set the stage for it. So think about how do I know this is beginning? What's the first indication that there's going to be a customer complaint? So add a task in this example explaining how does somebody know when a customer complaint comes in. So this doesn't have an example of that, but it would look kind of like you'd add a first task and you'd say, get complaints from email and phone. So put in how this starts. And then I'm just going to drag this to the top just to show you the drag and drop. So explain how it begins. Then go into the first step. So what is the next thing that they do? What is the third? What is the fourth? So then you try to go in a sequential order for the steps. If you get to situations where there are variables, use if-then statements like these. If this, then that. If this happens, then do that. If that happens, then do this. So everything is not the same way every time. Majority of the time it is. But when there are these if-thens, then use if-then statements to describe the different ways that the steps could go based on what happens or doesn't happen. Try to put as much detail in as possible. The ideal situation is somebody who hasn't done this work before and has the minimum qualifications for this position would then be able to follow the work plan and know what to do. That's the ideal situation. When I look at work plans, overwhelmingly, I always say this isn't enough information. People will say things like, determine whether this is a warranty issue. Well, my question to that is how? How do I know if it's a warranty issue or not? So when you write out a task like that, question yourself and say, can I say more about how they would determine whether it was a warranty issue or not? And if you can, then put that information in. Think about the minimum qualifications of the position doing this work. So the person you hire, you should have minimum qualifications and skills for that position. So if I hire a customer support position, in my advertising for that position, I might say they must have a 2-year degree or equivalent. They must have 3 years of customer service experience. They must know how to use Microsoft Word products, know how to research on the internet, know how to fill out documents and follow through and have good writing skills. So you list all these things out because then based on those minimum qualifications, you would hire or not hire a person. And you might even test them to see if they have those skills and qualifications. So if the customer support person had these skills and qualifications that I just described, well, I don't really need to go into a tremendous amount of detail on how to fill out a Word document or fill out a form, or how to search for the internet for something, or how to talk someone through something when they're in a difficult situation because they already have that experience. Another more obvious example is if you're hiring lawyers, say, or accountants, and you're hiring them with a law degree, well, you don't have to build processes explaining to them how to be lawyers. They should already know that. So consider these minimum qualifications, and that will help you decide what's enough detail and what's not enough. Look out for situations like this one. So this task here says, locate the customer's invoice. If you can't locate the invoice, ask the comma, ask the customer to give you the number of the hard copy, period. Gather all the, it's like a story about what to do, right? It's a lot of information all put into sentence format. So a better way to do it is to break it up into steps. So I'm just opening this. I might take this sentence and make it 2 sentences. And then here it says, if you can't locate the customer's invoice, ask if they have the invoice number or a copy of the invoice. Then this says, gather the following information. Well, that reads to me like a list. So I'd probably do like this and bullet point the list. So then I go here to each comma and make it into more of a list. I can even do the product or service was performed and any other information needed to address the situation. I can even do sub-bulleted lists. So I just highlight all of this. I didn't get it at the top. And then I go to the bullet point icon here, and then it's putting, I have extra spaces, but it's putting it in this bulleted list. I can even do a sub-bullet by hitting this little indent button. And then when I save it, you can see the difference. So rather than it being those paragraphs of information, I'm now seeing it more in an outline. And if somebody is learning this, they're learning how to do it, then if they can see it broken up into steps, then that's much easier than seeing it written like a story. So this all goes down to people's writing styles. There's some people who think in pictures and they think in great descriptions of things and they tell you stories while they're talking. And then there's other people who are more linear. They think in outlines. Those people who are more linear and they think in outlines and steps, they're not always the best writers, but they're the best technical writers, which is what's happening here. You want outline, step by step. Now, having said that, if you can have someone document a process who writes more in a story format, just instruct them to break it up. The bullets and sub-bullets within the work plans here, or the tasks, are really useful for that because they force you to kind of think step, outline, step by step. If you've got a tool inside of a process that should be referenced in the work plan, remember about the hyperlinks. So if I go here, this says, if not a warranty issue, proceed to complete the customer complaint form. So I would just highlight this customer complaint form. I hit the highlight the hyperlink tool. I know this is a custom form because I can see it right here. And then I look for the customer complaint form, and then I hit insert, and then save, and then there's the hyperlink. So look for the hyperlinks. Here's another example for a hyperlink. At the end of this process, someone has to enter notes into the CRM. Well, we've got a whole nother process inside of TouchStone on how to enter notes into the CRM. We have like a CRM how-tos process. That's a good thing to have for all your software in TouchStone. So rather than repeating the steps of how to enter the notes into the CRM right here in this work plan, and possibly 10 other work plans because people enter notes into the CRM in other situations, rather than doing that, I would go here to this entering notes into the CRM. I'd highlight this, entering notes, hyperlink, down here, looking for a work plan, hit the drop down, and you go to the E section. This is all alphabetical order now. Find the process. That's not the right one, but I'll do it for time's sake. And then hit enter notes into the CRM, insert, and then save. So this shows the relationships between this task and a whole other process that someone needs to enter and do. So remember those techniques. Generally, what happens if you're building the process is you think to yourself, oh, they've got to enter notes into the CRM. I wonder if we have a process for that. Or, oh, there's a form that needs to be filled out here. I wonder if we have a form. If you do, then stop at that task, go over to the uploaded files of the custom form and create a placeholder for that form. Or go in the 4 key functions to running the business, where you have your IT processes, CRM how-to right here, add that process title if you don't have it, and then hyperlink to it. Even though this might not be documented right now, you're identifying it. So the point I'm trying to make is oftentimes when you're documenting the tasks, you might come up with the need for other processes. You might notice where things are missing. So let's talk about checklists here quickly. To build a checklist, you just click the same as the work plans. Click the title, you put in the name of the checklist, and then you hit create checklist. So exact same method as work plans. In fact, all the tools are the same way. If you want to make one, you just click the icon right here, and it prompts you for the name. You add the name, and you hit create. That's it. So if you have an existing work plan that you want to turn into a checklist. You saw how we did that with the checklist icon, and then it looks something like this. Or you can build a checklist that's independent of a work plan. So it's something different. It doesn't relate to the work plan. So this is what it looks like when the checklist is blank. If I click Add Checklist Item right here, what is in the title is what's going to appear next to the box. So this is usually the action or the step. And then down here, if I want to put more details about this, I can into this description section. And then I hit Save. And this is what it looks like. The action or the task is next to the checklist box. It's always bolded. And then if there is a description, then it will show up down here. And then I go to the next checklist item. So this is the next step that someone's trying to accomplish. If I leave the description blank, when it prints, you don't see this, but you just see it in gray. When it's on the dashboard and you're using it, you don't see it either. So simple, step by step. The idea of a checklist is somebody checks off these tasks as they do this work. So use a checklist when you need quality control, when you need evidence that the steps have been done, when you need to refer back to something for whatever reason, and you want to make sure that those steps have been completed. Use a checklist when it's a very complicated process where the employee has to do certain things on one day and other things on another day, and it's hard for them to remember what they did and hadn't done yet. So either a checklist is for management purposes, or it's for the employee's own ability to stay organized. When the employee has a need to stay organized, well, then they clearly see the need for the checklist because they're in the midst of it. When it's for management purposes, they don't often see the purpose of the checklist. So I hear a lot of comments like, I don't have time to fill out the checklist. Why do I have to do this checklist? This is just extra time. Now I have to open up TouchStone. Now I have to find the checklist. There's all these yeah buts and complaints about the checklist. So as the owner or the manager, think about the value of having the checklist. If you determine for management purposes that it's essential for you to be able to refer back to something to know that it was done, well, then that's good enough. That's a good enough reason. Explain that to the employee. Give them context. You can put it into the objective right here, the why. This checklist must be filled out because when we do reconciliation at the end of the month, we need to know these steps have been followed in order to evaluate productivity or efficiency. Put the reason why. There's always a reason why. Sometimes managers just need checklists so they can see what's happening without having to be there, watching over everyone's shoulder all the time. That's a good enough reason for a checklist. If you're a manager managing 10 people, you got a lot of activities going on. If you want to make sure employees are following the process, that there's quality, that they're being efficient with how they're handling customer complaints or whatever it is, and you don't want to know when it's too late, when there's some big problem going on, but you just want to know on a regular basis that they're doing that, then the checklists are great for that. They allow you to see it without being there. You can manage from afar because you can see the checklist. So think about, is the checklist a valuable thing to have for those reasons? Also, as a manager, weigh this in. Are you committed to looking at those checklists every time, every week, every day, every month that they're filled out? Because if you're going to have employees just completing checklists and you're never actually looking at them to make sure that they're doing them, then there's no point to having the checklist. Because they're going to know within a matter of days that no one's looking anyway, so why do it? So all the whys you put here is just going to be pointless because they know you're not looking. So be committed to looking at the checklist and reviewing it. You can always go to the export feature right here and download these checklists, which everybody knows I hate at this point. Or you can use them in TouchStone, which is super easy. So here on the dashboard, if I go here to my control panel and I have a daily checklist, or I have a checklist I have to complete every time somebody does a customer complaint. I'm going to drag this to the top so you can see it. This is that customer complaint process in my dashboard. If I go to it, then I see all the content that's in this process, first of all. But if there's a checklist that I have to do every week or every time, a lot of times I'll just collapse these and then I'll go right to the checklist here. So here's that customer complaint processing checklist. If I click this, now I can save this as the customer's name who's complaining, and I can go and fill these boxes out as I do this work, and then I save it. Once I've saved it back to TouchStone, I can print it, which creates a PDF, which I can export somewhere else if I want to. But once I've saved it, it date and time stamps it, and it saves a copy of this back to TouchStone. I can go back to this customer complaint process here, and under the checklist, I can go here to completed, and I can see this checklist I just did, and I could go back to it, and if I have to do more the next day, I can continue filling it out. So it doesn't have to always be done right away on the onset, and then I save it. So this is all mobile compliant. An employee can call this checklist up on their phone. They can fill this checklist out and save it in 5 seconds if they need to. The manager then has to go and make sure they're doing the checklist. So once a week, I go here to reports. I go down to management review. I can search for a particular employee's name if I want. I can search the date range, which I do. And then when you hit run report, I'm going to see all the checklists that he did, every single one. And he's saving them as I've instructed him to save. So as a manager, just to check to see if the checklists are there is not that big of a deal. You just go to management review, do the date range, hit run. There. Okay, it's great. It's all there. If I need to look at something because there's a problem, then I can look at it. If I see that there's a certain employee that didn't fill out their checklist, and if you don't choose an employee, then you see all of your employees listed. If I see they haven't done it, I immediately go to them and say, you forgot your checklist on Friday. Where is it? I only have to do that not very often at all because people know I'm looking. They know I'm looking at them, and so they do them. So a checklist takes a bit of commitment because if you're going to require your employees to do them, then you as the manager need to be willing to manage it and review it and make sure it's being done. Somebody asked a question about hyperlinks, but I think I answered that, and he's saying I did, so I won't answer that particular question. So next week, we're going to be continuing on with our conversation about documenting processes and the process tools. The next process tools I'll discuss are going to be the scripts and uploaded files and all the other documents from there. Next week, if you have any questions about how to use tools, or even if you just want to show me an example of how you've done something, feel free to bring that to the training session. We always will most likely run out of time, but I always hang on at the end for anyone who wants to stay on longer and talk about anything or ask any more questions. All right, well, thank you for coming, everybody, and I'll be here next week, same time, same place.